Breaking news out of Dedham, where the judge presiding over Karen Reed's murder case denied a motion to dismiss 2 of the 3 charges against her. Reed is accused of killing her boyfriend, Boston police officer John O'Keefe, back in 2022.
In January 2022, Karen Reed was accused of being responsible for the death of her boyfriend, John O'Keefe, after he was found dead in a snowbank. At first, the case seemed simple, as Karen's SUV was allegedly involved in the accident. But as the investigation unfolded, things didn't add up. Key pieces of evidence went missing and the stories from witnesses didn't match. The police were stuck, unsure of what really happened. Just when it seemed like they were at a dead end, a surprising discovery changed everything. During a search of another person's phone, investigators found a chilling search history: how long to die in the cold. This search raised some serious questions about whether John's death was truly an accident or if something darker was at play. Could Karen really be the one responsible? Or is there more to this mystery than anyone thought? This new clue opened up a whole new angle, making everyone wonder if the truth was hiding right in front of them. Let's dive into this case and see if we can unravel the mystery together. Karen Reed, a 43-year-old finance lecturer and equity analyst, had what could only be called her worst fear on a chilly January 29, 2022 morning. John O'Keefe, a 46-year-old Boston police officer, was her lover, and the evening had begun like any other laid-back night out. Karen had no idea that she would never again spend the night with him. The two had shared drinks at a local tavern in Canton, a little village just outside the metropolis, before relocating the celebration to Brian Albert's home. The night took a tragic and enigmatic turn on Fairview Road, where Brian, a fellow Boston police officer, lived. The next morning, Karen found herself in a horrifying scenario when she got to Brian's house. Blood was still fresh on John's face as he lay dead on the snowbank outdoors. His eyes were swelled shut, his body was chilly and bruised, and the snow surrounding him was soaked with blood from his nose. What had brought him there? Where had he gone? The most disturbing of all is whether she was involved in any way.
We now know that the body of a man found outside a home in Canton is that of a Boston police officer. Officer John O'Keefe, who was off duty, was found dead on Fairview Road yesterday morning in front of a friend's house. State police were at the scene last night investigating this.
As Karen remained motionless, attempting to make sense of the unimaginable, these were the questions that were racing through her head. After the police were summoned, what initially appeared to be a regrettable accident swiftly turned into something far more intricate. It wasn't just a bad night. Something more sinister had occurred, and the investigation would soon begin to reveal the truth. There were many of the informal, carefree moments that are sometimes associated with a night out with friends on the night before John O'Keefe's untimely death. Like many couples, Karen and John didn't think that this would be their last night together as they spent the evening chatting and spending time together. The Waterfall Bar, a welcoming place where they get together with friends for drinks and chat, is where it all started. It was just another night.
They go out, by all accounts, they have a lot of drinks. They are both fairly intoxicated. There's surveillance footage from the bar that kind of shows them drinking, having a good time, nothing really out of the ordinary.
The group eventually agreed to spend the rest of the evening at Brian Albert's house. Everyone knew each other well enough, but they weren't a terribly close-knit group. Although they had collaborated, Brian and John's connection was more business-related than personal. The guests included John's longtime friend and Brian's sister-in-law, Jennifer McCabe, as well as Brian's wife, Nicole. It was a straightforward evening filled with pleasant people, a few drinks, and the kind of informal gathering that frequently concludes without any significant drama. However, as the night went on, things took an odd turn. Karen dropped John down at Brian's front door at around midnight. She remembers seeing him enter, thinking he had entered the house safely, and then going home herself. But when the police later put the events in chronological order, there was a startling twist.
She leaves around 12:30, but nobody ever sees Karen or John go inside the residence.
According to Brian and Jennifer, John never went inside the residence. Karen searched for John for hours, but he was nowhere to be found. John's body was found in a snowbank outside Brian Albert's home at around 6 in the morning. His physique was lifeless and frigid. For Karen, who was murmuring as she stood there in amazement, had she struck him with her car? Karen Reed was soon identified as the main suspect in the John O'Keefe killing inquiry. What started out as a horrific accident quickly evolved into something more sinister.
The three of them end up together in a car, Jen and Carrie in the front seat, Karen in the back seat. They drive to 34 Fairview, and as they're pulling up to the house, Karen Reed starts screaming and kicking the door and runs out of the car and runs to what Carrie Roberts said.
According to the prosecution, following a furious dispute, Karen purposefully struck John with her SUV, causing him to fall into a snowbank and lie there for hours. A broken taillight discovered close to the site, and Karen's confession to paramedics, "I hit him," was cited. Karen's defense, however, contended that she did not purposefully hurt John and that the evidence was contradictory. The truth was still unknown, and the case was far from obvious. Karen Reed's defense team quickly contested their case as the prosecution drew closer to her. They contended that the idea that Karen intentionally struck John with her SUV was illogical. The broken tail light was one important detail. The prosecution explained the broken left tail light by claiming that Karen struck John while backing up. The defense, however, questioned the prosecution's logic by pointing out that the right tail light was in fact damaged. They also questioned John's injuries, which were far more serious than one might anticipate from a slow-moving car. Even worse than a car backing into him softly, his damaged face indicated a severe hit. The prosecution's account was seriously called into question by the defense's arguments, leaving more questions than answers regarding the actual events. The defense immediately drew attention to Trooper Proctor, a close family friend of Brian Albert, and pointed up significant shortcomings in the inquiry. Bias was called into doubt by Proctor's involvement in finding the broken taillight and accusing Karen. Karen was unfairly singled out, according to the defense, because the investigators was overly preoccupied with her and ignored other options.
What did you tell your colleagues that you were looking for as you sat looking through Karen Reed's phone?
No nudes so far.
No nudes so far, correct?
Correct.
And you said that to your bosses.
Yes, sir.
The media made the case a public spectacle as it gained traction. The prosecution said the defense was using the press to influence public opinion, while the defense said the prosecution was attempting to silence them. The public was left wondering among the confusion if Karen was at fault or if she was the victim of a setup. With no definitive answers in sight, the case had devolved into a web of drama and suspicion. Would the truth be revealed at last, or would this case continue to be an impenetrable mystery? Karen Reed's case initially appeared to be a clear-cut matter. She had been drinking, argued with her boyfriend, and hit him with her car, so the evidence appeared to be clear. However, a far more intricate tale emerges when we delve deeper into the specifics. Let's now go over what transpired in detail. On January 29th, 2022, Karen Reed, a 43-year-old finance lecturer, faced her worst nightmare. Her boyfriend, John O'Keefe, a 46-year-old Boston police officer, was found dead in a snowbank after a night out. What started as a normal evening turned into a tragic mystery. Karen and John had drinks at a bar in Canton, a small town outside Boston. Afterward, they went to Brian Albert's house, a fellow police officer. But the night took a strange turn when the next morning, Karen arrived at Brian's house to find John's lifeless body outside in the snow. His face was bruised, his body cold, and there was blood in the snow. Karen had no idea how he ended up there or if she was in any way involved. At first, it seemed like a tragic accident, but as the police dug deeper, things didn't add up. The investigation revealed that John had never made it inside Brian's house, as Karen thought. In fact, he was found outside, hours after Karen had dropped him off. Karen quickly became the main suspect. The police believed she had run over John during an argument, leaving him to die in the cold. They pointed to a broken taillight found near the scene and a comment Karen made to paramedics saying, "I hit him." But Karen's defense team disagreed. They argued that the evidence didn't match the prosecution's story. For one, the taillight wasn't a clear sign that Karen hit John. It was the right taillight that was damaged, not the left. Plus, John's injuries were much worse than you would expect from being hit by a slow-moving car. The defense also pointed out that the investigation seemed biased, especially because a close family friend of Brian was involved. As the case went public, both sides used the media to make their points. The prosecution argued that Karen was guilty while the defense claimed she was being set up.
The taillight was intact when she left Brian Albert's house. She came home, and this was Karen leaving to begin the frantic search for John O'Keefe. Now, I don't know that you can see it from the video that you have there, but there is no doubt that when that...
With so much confusion and suspicion, the public was left wondering, was Karen really at fault, or was there something else going on? Karen's case seemed simple at first, but as we look closer, it becomes much more complicated. Let's dive into the details and see what really happened that night. Around 2 a.m. on January 29, 2022, just hours before John O'Keefe's tragic death, something strange happened. Jennifer McCabe, who was with John and Karen Reed that night, Googled "how long to die in the cold." This search seemed odd, but it raised some serious questions. Why would anyone look up such a dark detail if they didn't know John was in danger? John was later found dead outside of Brian Albert's house, but Karen had believed he had entered safely. What happened between the time she dropped him off and the discovery of his body? Was Jennifer's search a clue that she knew more than she let on? Things got even more suspicious when a forensic examiner revealed that Brian's contact information had been deleted from Jennifer's phone, along with several phone calls between them. This, the defense argued, suggested that someone was trying to cover something up. Brian Albert, a former Marine and experienced boxer, had connections to both the Massachusetts State Police and Canton Police Department. The defense worried that these ties might have protected him from scrutiny. Could Brian have used his influence to avoid being questioned?
And from all accounts, the other decision that you made and the other determination you came to was my client, Karen Reed, was a whack job, right?
Yes.
What else did you say in response to "she hot at least?" ?
So following that text, I responded, "Yeah, she's a babe. Weird Fall River accent, though."
Karen Reed insists she didn't kill John and is determined to find out who did. She believes others involved know the truth but aren't speaking up. She's convinced the real killer is hiding something, and she's committed to uncovering it. Witnesses saw Karen and John in her vehicle that night, but there were no signs of a crash, no loud noises, and no visible damage to her car. This casts doubt on the claim that she struck John with her SUV. John's Apple Health records also showed that he was inside Brian Albert's house that evening. His movements, including walking a few steps and going up the stairs, suggest he was alive much longer than the prosecution claims. This raises serious doubts about the story that Karen hit him with her car and left him to die in the snow. Even more troubling, the prosecution never examined Jennifer McCabe's phone, which had been in their possession for over a year. The defense argued that this was a huge mistake, especially when it was clear Jennifer's phone could hold key evidence. The prosecution's case also relied heavily on the broken taillight on Karen's SUV, which they claimed was damaged when she hit John. However, CCTV footage from the area was never reviewed, and security camera footage from a nearby library that could have shown the taillight damage was excluded. Even more troubling, Karen's own doorbell video, which could have been crucial, was either missing or unavailable. Another odd detail was the disappearance of Brian Albert's German Shepherd, Chloe. The defense pointed out that John had dog bite marks on his arm, suggesting he may have been attacked by the dog.
What is your opinion and conclusion concerning those injuries?
Those injuries appear to be consistent with an animal attack. Well, they are consistent with a large dog attack.
But Chloe was quickly moved out of state, preventing any DNA testing. Shortly after John's death, Brian sold his house for $50,000 less than its asking price. The defense team argues that John might have been injured inside the house by someone else, possibly Brian.
What did you list as cause of death on Mr. O'Keefe with regard to his death certificate?
Cause of death was blunt impact injuries of head and hypothermia.
And with reference to manner of death, what, if anything, did you list on Mr. O'Keefe's death certificate in relation to manner?
I listed could not be determined.
They believe Brian used his law enforcement connections to hide the truth. Karen's defense also highlighted her serious health issues, but despite this, her bail was set at $50,000. She was released on February 2, 2022, and now her fight for justice continues. The case has turned into a media spectacle, with some people supporting Karen's innocence and others accusing her of trying to use her resources to fight for her freedom.
I'm not from Texas, like my colleagues here. I'm a Boston kid, but I'll repeat what he said, which is, we ain't got no quit.
John's family is still seeking justice, but the true cause of his death remains a mystery. On April 16, 2024, the trial for Karen Reed began at the Norfolk County Courthouse. She was charged with second-degree murder, vehicular manslaughter, and fleeing the scene of an accident. However, after 25 hours of deliberation, the jury couldn't reach a decision, and a mistrial was declared on July 1, 2024. The retrial is scheduled for January 27, 2025. John O'Keefe's family is pursuing a wrongful death lawsuit, and the community remains divided. Some believe Karen is innocent, while others question the integrity of the investigation. As the trial continues, the truth remains uncertain, and Karen's quest for justice presses on. Will the real killer ever be revealed? Time will tell.